The Turning, Die Kehre, by Martin Heidegger. The essence of enframing is that setting upon gathered into itself which entraps the truth of its own coming to presence with oblivion. This entrapping disguises itself in that it develops into the setting in order of everything that presences as standing reserve, establishes itself in the standing reserve, and rules as the standing reserve. Enframing comes to presence as the danger. But does the danger therewith announce itself as the danger? No. To be sure, men are at all times and in all places exceedingly oppressed by dangers and exigencies, but the danger, namely being itself endangering itself in the truth of its coming to presence, remains veiled and disguised. This disguising is what is most dangerous in the danger. In keeping with this disguising of the danger through the ordering belonging to enframing, it seems time and again as though technology were a means in the hands of man. But in truth, it is the coming to presence of man that is now being ordered forth to lend a hand to the coming to presence of technology. Does this mean that man, for better or worse, is helplessly delivered over to technology? No, it means the direct opposite. And not only that, but essentially it means something more than the opposite, because it means something different. If enframing is a destining of the coming to presence of being itself, then we may venture to suppose that enframing, as one among being's modes of coming to presence, changes. For what gives destining its character as destining is that it takes place so as suitably to adapt itself to the ordaining that is ever one. To take place so as to adapt means to set out, in order to adjust fittingly to the directing already made apparent, for which another destining, yet veiled, is waiting. That which has the character of destining moves in itself at any given time toward a special moment that sends it into another destining, in which, however, it is not simply submerged and lost. We are still too inexperienced and thoughtless to think the essence of the historical from out of destining and ordaining, and taking place so as to adapt. We are still too easily inclined, out of habit, to conceive that which has the character of destining in terms of happening, and to represent the latter as an expiration, a passing away of events that have been established historiographically. We locate history in the realm of happening, instead of thinking history in accordance with its essential origin from out of destining. But destining is essentially destining of being, indeed in such a way that being itself takes place so as to adapt itself, and ever comes to presence as a destining, and accordingly changes in the manner of a destining. If a change in being, i.e. now in the coming to presence of enframing, comes to pass, then this in no way means that technology, whose essence lies in enframing, will be done away with. Technology will not be struck down, and it most certainly will not be destroyed. If the essence, the coming to presence of technology, enframing as the danger within being, is being itself, then technology will never allow itself to be mastered, either positively or negatively, by a human doing founded merely on itself. Technology, whose essence is being itself, will never allow itself to be overcome by men. That would mean, after all, that man was the master of being. Nevertheless, because being, as the essence of technology, has adapted itself into enframing, and because man's coming to presence belongs to the coming to presence of being, inasmuch as being's coming to presence needs the coming to presence of man, in order to remain kept safe as being in keeping with its own coming to presence in the midst of whatever is, and thus as being to endure as present. For this reason, the coming to presence of technology cannot be led into the change of its destining without the cooperation of the coming to presence of man. Through this cooperation, however, technology will not be overcome, überwunden, by men. On the contrary, the coming to presence of technology will be surmounted, verwunden, in a way that restores it into its yet concealed truth. This restoring surmounting is similar to what happens when, in the human realm, one gets over grief or pain. But the surmounting of a destining of being, here and now the surmounting of enframing, each time comes to pass out of the arrival of another destining, a destining that does not allow itself either to be logically and historiographically predicted or to be metaphysically construed as a sequence belonging to a process of history. For never does the historical, let alone happening itself as represented historiographically, determine destiny, but rather happening, together with the representation of the constancy assigned to it, is already in each instance that which, belonging to a destining of being, has the character of destining. Man is indeed needed and used for the restorative surmounting of the essence of technology, but man is used here in his essence that corresponds to that surmounting. In keeping with this, man's essence must first open itself to the essence of technology. This opening is, in terms of that coming to pass which discloses something quite different from the event of man's affirming technology and its means and promoting them. However, in order that man in his essence may become attentive to the essence of technology, and in order that there may be founded an essential relationship between technology and man in respect to their essence, modern man must first and above all find his way back into the full breadth of the space proper to his essence. That essential space of man's essential being receives the dimension that unites it to something beyond itself, solely from out of the conjoining relation, Verhältnis. That is the way in which the safekeeping of being itself is given to belong to the essence of man as the one who is needed and used by being. Unless man first establishes himself beforehand in the space proper to his essence, and there takes up his dwelling, he will not be capable of anything essential within the destining now holding sway. In pondering this, let us pay heed to a word of Meister Eckhart, as we think it in keeping with what is most fundamental to it. It reads, "Those who are not of a great essence, whatever work they perform, nothing comes of it." Reden der Unterscheidung, number 4. It is toward the great essence of man that we are thinking, inasmuch as man's essence belongs to the essence of being, and is needed by being to keep safe the coming to presence of being into its truth. Therefore, what is necessary above all is this, that beforehand we ponder the essence of being as that which is worthy of thinking, that beforehand, in thinking this, we experience to what extent we are called upon first to trace a path for such experiencing, and to prepare that path as a way into that which till now has been impassable. All this we can do only if, before considering the question that is seemingly always the most immediate one, and the only urgent one, what shall we do, we ponder this, how must we think? For thinking is genuine activity, genuine taking a hand, if to take a hand means to lend a hand to the essence, the coming to presence of being. This means to prepare, build for the coming to presence of being, that abode in the midst of whatever is, into which being brings itself and its essence to utterance in language. Language first gives to every purposeful deliberation its ways and its byways. Without language there would be lacking to every doing, every dimension in which it could bestir itself and be effective. In view of this, language is never primarily the expression of thinking, feeling, and willing. Language is the primal dimension within which man's essence is first able to correspond at all to being, and its claim, and, in corresponding, to belong to being. This primal corresponding, expressly carried out, is thinking. Through thinking, we first learn to dwell in the realm in which there comes to pass the restorative surmounting of the destining of being, the surmounting of enframing. The coming to presence of enframing is the danger. As the danger, being turns about into the oblivion of its coming to presence, turns away from this coming to presence, and in that way simultaneously turns counter to the truth of its coming to presence. In the danger there holds sway this turning about not yet thought on. In the coming to presence of the danger there conceals itself, therefore, the possibility of a turning, in which the oblivion belonging to the coming to presence of being will so turn itself that, with this turning, the truth of the coming to presence of being will expressly turn homeward, into whatever is. Yet probably this turning, the turning of the oblivion of being into the safekeeping belonging to the coming to presence of being, will finally come to pass only when the danger, which is in its concealed essence ever susceptible of turning, first comes expressly to light as the danger that it is. Perhaps we stand already in the shadow cast ahead by the advent of this turning. When and how it will come to pass after the manner of a destining, no one knows, nor is it necessary that we know. A knowledge of this kind would even be most ruinous for man, because his essence is to be the one who waits, the one who attends upon the coming to presence of being, in that, in thinking, he guards it. Only when man, as the shepherd of being, attends upon the truth of being, can he expect an arrival of a destining of being, and not sink to the level of a mere wanting to know. But what happens there where the danger comes to pass as the danger, and is thus for the first time unconcealedly danger? That we may hear the answer to this question, let us give heed to the beckoning sign that is preserved in some words of Hölderlin. At the beginning of the later version of his hymn, Patmos, the poet says, "But where danger is, grows the saving power also." If now we think these words still more essentially than the poet sang them, if we follow them in thought as far as they go, they say, "Where the danger is as the danger, there the saving power is already thriving also." The latter does not appear incidentally. The saving power is not secondary to the danger. The selfsame danger is, when it is as the danger, the saving power. The danger is the saving power inasmuch as it brings the saving power out of its, the danger's, concealed essence that is ever susceptible of turning. What does to save mean? It means to loose, to emancipate, to free, to spare and husband, to harbor protectingly, to take under one's care, to keep safe. Lessing still uses the word saving emphatically, in the sense of vindication, i.e. to put something back into what is proper and right, into the essential, and to keep it safe therein. That which genuinely saves is that which keeps safe, safekeeping. But where is the danger? What is the place for it? Inasmuch as the danger is being itself, it is both nowhere and everywhere. It has no place as something other than itself. It is itself the placeless dwelling place of all presencing. The danger is the epoch of being coming to presence as enframing. When the danger is as the danger, then its coming to presence expressly comes to pass. But the danger is the entrapping, that is the way in which being itself, in the mode of enframing, pursues with oblivion the safekeeping belonging to being. In the entrapping, what comes to presence is this, that being dismisses and puts away its truth into oblivion in such a way that being denies its own coming to presence. When, accordingly, the danger is as the danger, then the entrapping that is the way being itself entraps its truth with oblivion comes expressly to pass. When this entrapping with oblivion does come expressly to pass, then oblivion as such turns in and abides. Thus rescued through this abiding from falling away out of remembrance, it is no longer oblivion. With such in-turning, the oblivion relating to being's safekeeping is no longer the oblivion of being, but rather, turning in thus, it turns about into the safekeeping of being. When the danger is as the danger, with the turning about of oblivion, the safekeeping of being comes to pass. World comes to pass. That world comes to pass as world, that the thing things, this is the distant advent of the coming to presence of being itself. The self-denying of the truth of being, which entraps itself with oblivion, harbors the favor as yet ungranted, that this self-entrapping will turn about, that, in such turning, oblivion will turn and become the safekeeping belonging to the coming to presence of being, instead of allowing that coming to presence to fall into disguise. In the coming to presence of the danger, there comes to presence and dwells a favor, namely the favor of the turning about of the oblivion of being into the truth of being. In the coming to presence of the danger, where it is as the danger, is the turning about into the safekeeping. Is this safekeeping itself? Is the saving power of being? When the turning comes to pass in the danger, this can happen only without mediation, for being has no equal whatever. It is not brought about by anything else, nor does it itself bring anything about. being never at any time runs its course within a cause-effect coherence. Nothing that effects as being precedes the mode in which it, being itself, takes place so as to adapt itself, and no effect as being follows after. Sheerly, out of its own essence of concealedness, being brings itself to pass into its epoch. Therefore, we must pay heed. The turning of the danger comes to pass suddenly. In this turning, the clearing belonging to the essence of being suddenly clears itself and lights up. This sudden self-lighting is the lightning flash. It brings itself into its own brightness, which it itself both brings along and brings in. When, in the turning of the danger, the truth of being flashes, the essence of being clears and lights itself up. Then the truth of the essence, the coming to presence of being, turns and enters in. Toward where does in-turning bring itself to pass? Toward nowhere except into being itself, which is as yet coming to presence out of the oblivion of its truth. But this same being comes to presence as the coming to presence of technology. The coming to presence of technology is enframing. In-turning, as the bringing to pass of the turning about of oblivion, turns into that which now is the epoch of being. That which genuinely is in no way this or that particular being. What genuinely is, i.e., what expressly dwells and endures as present in the is uniquely being. Only being is. Only in being, and as being, does that which the is names bring itself to pass. That which is being from out of its essence. To flash, blitzen, in terms both of its derivation and of what it designates, is to glance, blicken. In the flashing glance, and as that glance, the essence, the coming to presence of being, enters into its own emitting of light. Moving through the element of its own shining, the flashing glance retrieves that which it catches sight of and brings it back into the brightness of its own looking. And yet, that glancing, in its giving of light, simultaneously keeps safe the concealed darkness of its origin as the unlighted. The in-turning, Kehre, that is the lightning flash of the truth of being, is the entering, flashing glance, insight, Einblick. We have thought the truth of being in the worlding of world as the mirror play of the fourfold of sky and earth, mortals and divinities. When oblivion turns about, when world as the safe-keeping of the coming to presence of being turns in, then there comes to pass the in-flashing, Einblitz, of world into the injurious neglect of the thing. That neglect comes to pass in the mode of the rule of enframing. In-flashing of world into enframing is in-flashing of the truth of being into truthless being. In-flashing is the disclosing, coming to pass within being itself. Disclosing coming to pass, Ereignis, is bringing to sight that brings into its own, Eignende Ereignis. Insight into that which is, this designation now names the disclosing that brings into its own that is the coming to pass of the turning within being, of the turning of the denial of being's coming to presence into the disclosing coming to pass of being's safekeeping. Insight into that which is itself the disclosing that brings into its own, as which the truth of being relates itself and stands in relation to truthless being. Insight into that which is, this names the constellation in the essence of being. This constellation is the dimension in which being comes to presence as the danger. From the first and almost to the last, it has seemed as though insight into that which is means only a glance such as we men throw out from ourselves into what is. We ordinarily take that which is to be whatever is in being, for the is asserted of what is in being. But now everything has turned about. Insight does not name any discerning examination, Einsicht, into what is in being that we conduct for ourselves. Insight, Einblick, as in flashing, Einblitz, is the disclosing coming to pass of the constellation, of the turning within the coming to presence of being itself, and that within the epoch of enframing. That which is in no way that which is in being, for the it is and the is are accorded to what is in being only inasmuch as what is in being is appealed to in respect to its being. In the is, being is uttered, that which is, in the sense that it constitutes the being of what is in being, is being. The ordering belonging to enframing sets itself above the thing, leaves it, as thing, unsafeguarded, truthless. In this way, enframing disguises the nearness of world that nears in the thing. Enframing disguises even this, its disguising, just as the forgetting of something forgets itself and is drawn away in the wake of forgetful oblivion. The coming to pass of oblivion not only lets fall from remembrance into concealment, but that falling itself falls simultaneously from remembrance into concealment, which itself also falls away in that falling. And yet, in all the disguising belonging to enframing, the bright open space of world lights up, the truth of being flashes. At the instant, that is, when enframing lights up, in its coming to presence, as the danger, i.e., as the saving power. In enframing, moreover, as a destining of the coming to presence of being, there comes to presence a light from the flashing of being. Enframing is, though veiled, still glance, and no blind destiny in the sense of a completely ordained fate. Insight into that which is, thus do we name the sudden flash of the truth of being into truthless being. When insight comes disclosingly to pass, then men are the ones who are struck in their essence by the flashing of being. In insight, men are the ones who are caught sight of. Only when man, in the disclosing coming to pass of the insight by which he himself is beheld, renounces human self-will, and projects himself toward that insight, away from himself, does he correspond in his essence to the claim of that insight. In thus corresponding, man is gathered into his own, geeignet, that he, within the safeguarded element of world, may, as the mortal, look out toward the divine. Otherwise not, for the God also is, when he is, a being, and stands as a being within being, and its coming to presence, which brings itself disclosingly to pass out of the worlding of world. Only when insight brings itself disclosingly to pass, only when the coming to presence of technology lights up as enframing, do we discern how, in the ordering of the standing reserve, the truth of being remains denied as world. Only then do we notice that all mere willing and doing in the mode of ordering steadfastly persists in injurious neglect. In this same way, all mere organizing of the world conceived and represented historiographically in terms of universality remains truthless and without foundation. All mere chasing after the future so as to work out a picture of it through calculation in order to extend what is present and half thought into what, now veiled, is yet to come, itself still moves within the prevailing attitude belonging to technological calculating representation. All attempts to reckon existing reality morphologically, psychologically, in terms of decline and loss, in terms of fate, catastrophe, and destruction, are merely technological behavior. That behavior operates through the device of the enumerating of symptoms whose standing reserve can be increased to infinity and always varied anew. Such analyses of the situation do not notice that they are working only according to the meaning and manner of technological dissecting, and that they thus furnish to the technological consciousness the historiographical technological presentation of happening, commensurate with that consciousness. But no historiographical representation of history as happening ever brings us into the proper relation to destining, let alone into the essential origin of destining in the disclosing coming to pass of the truth of being that brings everything into its own. All that is merely technological never arrives at the essence of technology. It cannot even once recognize its outer precincts. Therefore, as we seek to give utterance to insight into that which is, we do not describe the situation of our time. It is the constellation of being that is uttering itself to us. But we do not yet hear, we whose hearing and seeing are perishing through radio and film under the rule of technology. The constellation of being is the denial of world, in the form of injurious neglect of the thing. Denial is not nothing. It is the highest mystery of being within the rule of enframing. Whether the God lives or remains dead is not decided by the religiosity of men, and even less by the theological aspirations of philosophy and natural science. Whether or not God is God comes disclosingly to pass from out of and within the constellation of being. So long as we do not, through thinking, experience what is, we can never belong to what will be. Will insight into that which is bring itself disclosingly to pass? Will we, as the ones caught sight of, be so brought home into the essential glance of being that we will no longer elude it? Will we arrive thereby within the essence of the nearness that, in thinging the thing, brings world near? Will we dwell, as those at home, in nearness, so that we will belong primally within the fourfold of sky and earth, mortals and divinities? Will insight into that which is bring itself disclosingly to pass? Will we correspond to that insight through a looking that looks into the essence of technology and becomes aware of being itself within it? Will we see the lightning flash of being in the essence of technology, the flash that comes out of stillness as stillness itself? Stillness stills. What does it still? It stills being into the coming to presence of world. May world in its worlding be the nearest of all nearing that nears, as it brings the truth of being near to man's essence, and so gives man to belong to the disclosing bringing to pass that is a bringing into its own.